All right, it is the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm sure there's going to be a couple other people that are going to be logging in here, but we're just in the interest of time, just make sure we'll go ahead and get started here. So welcome everyone to this very special evening. It's a live Q&A session with Pat Johnson, the author of a handbook for building and sustaining vibrant Toastmaster programs in corporations. So my name is Anuja Kennan. I am the Assistant Club Growth Director for District 2, and with me today is Linda Wortman, the Club Growth Director for District 2. And so as many of you know, during this month, members of District 2 have participated in a book discussion to do a deeper dive into this awesome book that Pat wrote about how to improve that initial start of a corporate club, and then also how to help build and sustain these corporate clubs so they thrive. And our group was called Creating Corporate Clubs Chat. And so all of us learned a lot, much more about how to change the language that we use when we interact with corporations to better connect with them, how to improve those initial conversations with corporations, and also what things you should do to help sustain those corporate clubs. I know I had a lot of aha moments participating in the group. And so tonight is our final session, and we wanted to open it up to others in the district to have this special opportunity to participate in a Q&A with the author herself. Now we will start, I'm going to go ahead and switch to this slide here. So we will start with several members who submitted questions beforehand, but if you do have some questions or if you have some follow-up questions, feel free to put the questions in the chat for me privately, so then that way it doesn't distract the other participants here. And so we'll do our best to try to get to those answers, answered to you during the hour. And so now I would like to formally introduce our special guest this evening. Not only is Pat an author, but she's also a keynote speaker, an educator, a mentor, and a life coach. Pat joined Toastmasters International in 1983 in rural northern Manitoba. During her 38 years of continuous learning and membership in Toastmasters, she has spoken in a long list of countries around the world as a keynote speaker and educator. She has also served Toastmasters International in many different capacities. She is the past international president, serving from 2010 to 2011. She was a Region 10 advisor, a Region 2 advisor, a District 21 distinguished district governor, international director from Region 1. She was also the Learning Master Manager for the curriculum design of our Pathways program. She's also the recipient of Toastmasters President's Citation Award, which is awarded for outstanding leadership and communication on a global level. And she's also the current VP membership of her home club, Rise and Shine, number 331 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. So please help me give a warm welcome to Pat Johnson. Thank you so much, Pat. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Anu, and thank you, Linda, fellow Toastmasters and members of District 2, first of all, and the various districts that are here. I know not all of you are from District 2. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, thank you for taking the time to read my book. This is the first time I've ever had my book reviewed. And so I was telling my partner, Nigel, that, oh, they read my book at book club. This is
new. I have highlighted. I don't know, you can't see it here, but I highlighted. I have notes in it. I have dog-eared it, so I go back and forth many times for this book. Yes,
that's great. Well, mine is full of plagues and addendums and revisions because I've revised it, and I'm waiting to hear from World Headquarters if we're going to print the second version and when. So. Oh. Yeah, awesome. So we're waiting to see what that direction is going to be. So I want to talk because Anu and Linda invited me to talk for a few minutes about my passion for Toastmasters and the world of Toastmasters in the corporate world. And this started a long time ago, when I was first in Toastmasters, probably about 6 years, my very first club that I helped charter was a corporate club. Now, I didn't have a lot of delineation knowledge in those days, but I went to this technical company. It was very much an IT company, supported a group of people, and we got this club chartered. Now, it was not a corporate club. It was a community club inside a corporate building. Because the people paid for their membership, they did it on their own time, and they basically begged, borrowed, or stole a location to meet after work, and became invisible in the corporation. But that set aside, when I got to about 20 years ago, I had a great experience of working with another IT company in Victoria. And this small company came, and they were actually contractors. So they contracted out for developing software programs for companies, for big companies or government. And they really ran projects. They were full of project managers, researchers, computer engineers, those type of people. So very hands-on techie people. And they found out that I was in Toastmasters. They asked me to come and visit. This was the vice president of the organization. And I went, I took a friend of mine, Rita Sanatani, and her and I went to visit this corporation. And they said, we want to have the Toastmaster program inside. And this is where this seed was planted. So we worked with them, and we created this program, and they created the structure around it. They housed it in their HR department. They did put Toastmasters in their new employee hire packages. They did recognition at their monthly project update dinners that they had as an organization. They had a policy that when you walked in the door for the Toastmasters meeting, you left your designation, you left your titles, you left your office outside of that room, that everybody was an equal inside the room. So it was interesting to watch as they self-sustained themselves for almost 20 years, that club. They went to officer training twice a year. They sometimes participated, not often as speakers in contests, but they would come and judge and cheer for other people. So they were involved in Toastmasters as well. So I had this model that wouldn't let go of me. And some of you that know me know that I can be a very patient lobbyist. I get an idea and I can carry it around in my bag for years. And when I get an ear that'll listen, I can talk about it. Somebody will say, oh, that's a good idea. And oh, thank you. And then I'll go talk to somebody else, and away we go. And I did this for years. Then probably about 7 years ago, I got invited to a district, and they said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, what I would really like to do, because you're a big, very city oriented, and you have a lot of corporate clubs, supposedly, I would love to do a workshop for corporate clubs. But I said, I want to do a whole workshop. I don't want an hour. I want a half a day. So they gave me 3.5 hours. They brought their deck together, and we, in one room, that's when we could be in person. You may be able to remember those days. They're faint memory for most of us, but we were together. And there were members of the corporate clubs that came, or corporations that came. There were district members, and we had a room full of people. And we did this interactive 3.5 hour workshop. They talked about what didn't work, what the failures were, and I presented some of the ideas, things that I'd been thinking about and talking about for a long time. Did I say I can be really patient? So I did this workshop, and I thought, okay, this is great. And then it just kind of all faded away. And I thought, okay, so somebody will remember. So eventually people started calling me. I did a few workshops in district conferences when I was asked to do workshops, and people started phoning me one-on-one. Well, what I discovered was pretty soon they were consuming a lot of time because I was spending 2 hours on the phone with them, just getting them started in the basics of what I was thinking about. And finally I thought, this is crazy. This is a full-time job that I don't get paid for. And everybody's going out and interpreting it. So I was talking to my friend Cheryl Roche, and she said, you need to write a book. And I said, I need to write a book. So I talked to World Headquarters and they said, you should write a book. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. So I literally sat down, and in 3 weeks from beginning to end, I published the book. It was magical. I sat down and I talked for a whole week into my voice activated software, and it printed it all out. What I had Dragon Speak, just printed it all out. Well, then I saw how crazy my brain was because then I had to start and edit it. And the interesting thing was how things just went bing, bing, bing. So I'm sitting there editing, thinking, I can't edit this whole book because I'm too close to it. And I get a note from Paul Sturman, who is a senior editor at Toastmasters. And Paul says, Toastmasters has just moved to Colorado and I'm not moving, so I'm doing private contract. If you know of anybody that would like some editing. I picked up the phone and I said, Paul, I just got your email. I need to hire you. I've just written a book. He said, send it to me. So within a couple of days, I sent it off to Paul, and he edited that book and made sense out of my brain dump. And that was then Cheryl Roche and I worked together to get it ready to go to print, and we sent it off to a printer. And that was about 3 weeks in length. And like 2 months from when we started, I was standing on the stage in Chicago going, here we are, here's the book. So it was pretty amazing. But it's something that, you know, when I look at Toastmasters, because I've been here for so long, and 38 years, some of you have been here longer than me, some of you haven't been alive that long, but you start to see the gaps. And it frustrates me because when I look at speaking, the very first thing that I was told as a speaker was know your audience. And yet we go out and we sell a product because they're paying for it. So we sell a product to a client and we don't match their needs. And that just bothered me so badly because, see, I worked in that chair. I was the head of learning and development. I hired contractors to meet the needs that we had identified in our corporate world, in our government world. And I was hiring people, and I couldn't find anybody that would do listening skills. I couldn't find anybody that did training for thinking skills. And I went, but we do this in Toastmasters. And I said, well, why don't I hire Toastmasters? And I went, no. The way we go into corporations ill-prepared to meet the needs of the corporation, I would not bring Toastmasters in. And that was the light bulb. I went, we can change that. And so that became very earnest when I said, I've got to lobby. I've got to be patient about this. I've got to talk about it and make the changes. I didn't need to have all the answers. And when I wrote the book, I purposely made it quite general because I thought people would interpret it and take it and say, okay, so here's the concept. How would this work in this corporation, ABC? What I discovered was people wanted step 1, step 2, step 3. And so I still heard from a lot of people one-on-one saying, well, you've got a general concept here, but what are the individual steps? And so I would say, well, what do you think they could be? They're different for each corporation. So since the book's been launched, probably at least once every week, I have spoken on this topic around the world. And I think we're gaining some momentum. I know some districts are putting practices in place, and it is making a difference. And we're making progress at World Headquarters as well. So that's kind of how it happened. And I'm still absolutely passionate about, because I think it makes a big difference. I think if we meet the corporation where they are, not where we want them to be, but where they are, I think we can do business. And I think that it'll be a great partnership if we let our curriculum live in their environment and their processes. We maintain the curriculum, but they provide the processes for it. So I'm going to turn it over to Linda or Anu, whoever's going to ask questions, because I know that people submitted questions and are going to submit questions. So let's talk about what you want to talk about. And thank you for reading the book. You're not connected yet, Anu.
It says you're still connecting. It says still connecting to audio. I think her connection went a little dim there for a moment, so we'll give her a minute here.
There she is. You're muted now. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Awesome.
Sound
All right,
check.
very good. So the joys of the internet. So I actually lost connection. So that's why I connect over the phone so I can hear everything you had to say. And then so I just had to quickly log in. So thank you for that. That was awesome to hear also the background of how the book was created. That's always fascinating. All right, so yes, so on to the Q&A here. So we had a very lively discussion at our last session, and Peter Horn actually brought up something that I didn't even think about was a potential obstacle when in the corporate setting. So when employees participate in Toastmasters, in a Toastmasters corporate club, it's not just that hour that they have to meet weekly. It also requires the employees to do their homework and work on pathways projects. What suggestions do you have to encourage larger corporations to make time for employees to do this additional work? So as you know, many of the high power companies, it is not uncommon to have 60 to 80 hour work weeks. How can we help them build in that time?
Well, thank you for that question. I actually don't ask for that. I think that, and this is my own personal bias. When I ran learning and development departments, both in government and in corporations and not-for-profit, I told my employees that we partnered in all their learning, that I would give them time and I would pay for the tuition of the program and they had to do the homework. I also developed a program, 218, it was a 217 hour online program for our developing leaders in our workplace. And the requirement for that program was that they had to do it all the work and reading on their time. So that was, if they had spare time at work, they could take that if they had approval by their supervisor. But it was a home study program that they did on their own time. And then they brought the learnings to work and asked their supervisors to help them implement it. So I really expect that it's a partnership. If somebody said to me that, or asked me that question right up front, Peter, if I was in a corporation, I'd say, you know, my experience with leadership is that it doesn't fit between 9 and 5. And so if you're learning leadership, it means to go above and beyond. And what do you want? What are you willing to bring? It's not the employer handing you everything. So partner and invest in your future. Just as you would invest if you were going to the university. If you signed up to a university to take a course and your employer paid for it, you'd probably do that homework at home.
Okay,
So
awesome, very good, thank you. So then following up on that first question, how can we encourage more pathways progress, especially with somewhat limited meeting time?
Well, I belong to a club that meets once a week for 1 hour. We have 1 hour and 1 hour and 10 minutes. We meet at 7 o'clock in the morning. We always have 2 speakers. And if we have more than 2 speakers, if we have 3, we give up table topics. We don't let people speak unless they have a Pathways project, because it's actually a violation in copyright, etc. And when you look at, if you look at the policy violations handbook, it's a violation if you're not doing project speeches. So to hold the integrity of the program, you have to be. So for example, tonight I'm doing a project speech. Linda's my evaluator, and I'm doing a level 4 presentation tonight out of Presentation Mastery. So I'm committed, and I would say that in order to get other people to do it, you have to be the role model, you have to practice what you preach. And there are a lot of people out there that unfortunately don't realize that Toastmasters is not what you learn just by walking into a meeting and sitting listening to someone else give a speech on some topic and doing table topics, but it's actually inside the curriculum, that there's a curriculum inside that meeting that we need to burst open and explore. So if you're not working the curriculum, in my opinion, you're not in Toastmasters. So
That's awesome. I like that. I like that. Definitely, we need to blow open that curriculum in Toastmasters. Fantastic. Then one other question is it better to set things up for meeting during the workday, or is it better to do it at day's end? What do you find better for time wise for those meetings to occur?
Oh, my experience, so a couple of things. First of all, I think it really depends on the kind of business you do and the flow of your day. And if you've got people coming and going, if people are working off site, it really depends on what works best for the corporation. One of the first questions I have for a corporation is, tell me how you run your training. How do you get your people? They come to a classroom? Do they do it remotely? How do they do their training? And then they tell me, and I say, perfect, that'll work perfectly for Toastmasters, regardless of what it is, because that's how they do their training. And they've already got the structure in place. They already know how to run it. They already know how to register people for that kind of program. So that works perfectly for us. We only have the curriculum. We don't need banners. We don't need gavels. We don't need Pledge of Allegiance. We're running a corporate learning program. And so however they run it, take the curriculum and it'll work perfectly. My concern with at the end of the day is people are tired. Now they've transitioned, and now it becomes mostly their time, not corporate time. And this is another question that I ask the corporations, that I've learned to ask the corporations. When I'm first meeting with them, I say, tell me when your employees go for training. Do you expect them to go on their own time or after work to training? Or do they go for training during work hours? And I ask them the same thing about who pays. Do you expect your employees to pay for their professional development? Or is there a certain allowance? Because some corporations or government agencies have a set amount of time and money for each employee in a year's time. So I want to find out all about that, because then I said, that's perfect. We can work with that, because I don't have to bring the process.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah, thank you. And then just as a reminder, since I did have that little technical issue. So Marty, I know you had a question that you submitted. If you don't mind submitting that again, because then I lost my chat. So if you submitted a question within the first 15 minutes, please send it to me over again. And we'll try to get to those as well. So next question is from Ray Roman. So he brought up a couple of questions regarding training. And so I thought these were really interesting questions as well. So it's not just club officer training, but for area directors and division directors as well. So in your book, you talk about how it is important to use corporate language versus community club lingo. The person starting the corporate club might be conscious about using that corporate club language, but area directors who may be longtime community club members aren't as aware about the need to use that different language. How should we change some of our training to help support some of this, especially when it comes to area directors and division directors?
Yeah, this is critical. And thanks for the question, Ray. One of the things that I strongly suggest, if you've got an area director that has corporate clubs, now you have to find out how their corporate clubs are actually built. Are they really community clubs inside a corporate building? In other words, they don't need to change anything. But even if they were, and they're attempting to rebuild, you have to train your area and division directors how to talk the language, how they're going to be set up differently, because you cannot go in with an area director report and fill it out for a community club on a corporate club, because you're going to find a whole bunch of gaps. You're going to find that there's no guests at the meeting. Of course not. The corporation is sending their employees. They're not opening the doors for anybody to walk in. They're not going to pay for somebody because Pat walks by and sees a learning session going in and I walk in. That's not how training works in the corporate world. We're sent or we ask to go and we're approved. They pay, we show up on the time and we go to the training. We don't run around the hallways looking for people to join. So an area director has to be aware. Open houses are not a technique that you use in a corporate club. Inviting your friends is not a technique you use in a corporate club, a true corporate club. Putting posters in the hallway is not a strategy for a corporate club. That's not how they run their training departments. All we're doing is inserting ourselves into their training calendar, their training functions. They send the people. We tell them how many they need to send. What I also suggest, and I've thought lots about this, and so many of the details are not in the book, but having thought and talked to probably thousands of people about this, is that, you know, you have to decide as a corporate club, if it's sponsored and supported by the corporation, when do you do intake of new members? So you have to think of all the pieces, because they're not going to think about it. They don't know. But if they're paying, if a corporation is actually waiting for a purchase order or an invoice or whatever from world headquarters, and they're making this happen, they don't want to send new member dues or tuition every second week to world headquarters. They're going to go, we're not doing that. So is every 6 months reasonable for them to have an intake of new participants? That would be my suggestion, but I would also say that they need to seriously look at as a corporation to build a policy so that there's consistency throughout the corporation. So regardless of if the leadership moves or changes, or the director of the department changes, the policy is in place. So people get an hour of practice time a week. They get it during work hours. It's paid work. It's recognized, or and it's paid, or maybe they get reimbursed upon successful completion. Now you have to define what successful completion is, because we don't have pass or fail. Mm-hmm. So all those little wrinkles that we just go, oh, it's nothing. It's something in the corporate world, and you have to define it for them or ask them the questions. So back to area and division directors, absolutely. You have to train them, and you have to do the paradigm shift for them. You have to be there to help them switch it off. Like I say to them, forget everything you know about Toastmasters. If you're going into a corporation, forget it. Mm-hmm. And go and listen and watch. But train them.
Good. So I'm actually going to jump. Yeah. And I'll jump. Ray had a couple more questions on training, but I'm going to actually jump to one question Dawn had, because when you mentioned that, they're not going to grab people from the hallway or ask their friends, especially I was an area director. I was area director 16, and I had 2 corporate clubs, of 2 Boeing clubs. And yeah, so you have to think about it differently. How do you build membership? So that was one of Dawn's questions. how do you go about building membership, a growing membership in corporate clubs? What are some strategies that you would have?
I make an appointment with the training department and I go and visit them. And I say, thank you for meeting with me again. Let's just go back to what our original agreement was. When we signed the contract, when you agreed to bring Toastmasters in, the contract actually states that you must have a minimum of 20 members at all times. You have not fulfilled that. And so how do you plan to bring the attendance up to 20 members at all times? Because that affects our ability to deliver a quality program. And then I just am quiet. They can tell me how they're going to do it. I'm not doing it for them. That's their part of the bargain. My part of the bargain is we're going to ensure delivery and quality of curriculum. They're going to provide the people. They're going to provide the space, the time, the money. We've got the curriculum. We just walk in with our briefcase with the package and say, do you have access? Do you have firewalls that you need to remove for your participants? If so, well, okay, are you having a kiosk? Or are you taking that list of people? So it's not ours to solve. The membership is theirs. And if they can't fill the program, this is what contractors do. How many of you are contractors in your life? So I've done contract work and I go in and I say, so one of the courses that I deliver, so I deliver a program for the university. And I say, I need a minimum of 16 people in this program for it to work because we're going to work in pairs. We're going to break up. We need small teams. And so I need 16. If you can't provide 16 people, we're postponing the program. Call me when we have 16 or more. That happens every day in the corporate training departments. And in contracts, as contractors, we usually say up to 2 weeks before the contract that they can postpone the start of it if there's insufficient registration for it. So we go back to it's their responsibility. They signed. So take that off your list of things to worry about and just set a meeting with the people in charge.
Very good. And so actually, Peter, I'm going to kind of go off a policy here because I know Peter sent a question in, but it was exactly what I was thinking anyway too. Should there be a different visit report for corporate clubs versus community clubs? Is that something they should think, Toastmasters International should think about?
I think Toastmasters International is working to get their head around all of this. They've just put out some new materials for corporate. Area director reports are not. They've simplified the area director report in the last couple of years, but I think we would have, in all honesty, been much further ahead because I've had some very intense, long, very productive meetings with World Headquarters about corporate, and we're on the same page because I've basically said, look, I'm out there, the voice in the wilderness talking. This can't be Pat Johnson's program. You know, I said, if I'm way off to what you want and the board's talking about, you need to tell me so that I can stop, because this is going to be really bad. This is going to be a bad scene if you're suddenly going to say, oh no, that we're not doing orange, we're doing purple. So we've agreed that we're very aligned, and because of I would say really that because it was really ramping up, and then pandemic and the bottom fell out of everything. So I think it was last week or the week before, they've just released some pages for corporate. So it's a start. And again, I'm in conversation with them. So there's a few of us out there that are holding the flags and they're talking to us. So it's great. It just takes a lot of patience and just a gentle lobbying.
Yes. All right, very good. All right, so I'm going to go back. I see a couple other questions there, so I'll come back to those. So finishing off some of that training questions. So we talked about the area directors and division directors and having a little bit of a different take, or being more of awareness about the different needs for corporate clubs. But then when it comes to club officer training. So as we know, the corporate speak for club officers is the executive, the program executive board or leadership roles. So because they actually have, this was like another aha moment for me that I didn't realize when I read your book, is that they have additional roles. You know, I was president of Aspiring Leaders and I was VP membership of Aspiring Leaders. There's other roles that, or responsibilities that a corporate club officer would have to have. And do they get trained on it, or they're aware of that? So what do you, should club officer training change with Toastmasters?
Yes. Again, right now, because most districts are just starting to do this, so we're in infancy stages. But just like 8 years ago or so, that when I said, just invite everybody from corporate clubs and let's just problem shoot. Let's just troubleshoot for them and let them bring their concerns, and let's talk about how they can corporately solve it, not Toastmasters solve it. Let's talk about how they would do it in their corporation so they can set it up differently. And so we can, and lots of districts are starting to do this, is hold at their COTs and at their TLIs, they have a breakout room where corporates go. And all you need is somebody that's conversant in it and really comfortable and probably has a good, strong corporate background or training development background, something like that, to lead it and just facilitate it. Talk about what they're doing, best practices, what works. They can learn a lot from one another. Of course, when I'm involved in it, I talk about, are they training during the day? And if they're not really there, do they want to change that? Is there an opportunity to change it? Can they go in and enroll their corporation into creating this as a learning program inside their corporation rather than something that hangs over the edge after work, right? Mm-hmm. So again, it falls to the district. You know, when I launched the book in 2018, I said from the international stage, if I have a vision, I said, and my vision is that in the future, there's one whole department at World Headquarters that's called corporate programs. And in that, they write programs and they define what a corporate club is actually, so that it's not where a whole bunch of people get together and meet inside a corporate building. That does not make you a corporate club. So define it and separate it. That's part of the challenge right now in your districts, is that you can go down and clubs will be identified as corporate clubs, but they're community clubs meeting in a building that maybe is owned by Fortis or owned by the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. And they call them a corporate club, but they're not, they're a community club. They function like that. Every member is responsible for finding another member. If they lose their meeting space, they all go running out on the street with their hair on fire looking for a new meeting place. You know, they're a community club. And I've gone to a number of corporate clubs like Amazon and FedEx and places like that, like big international companies. They're all community clubs. And almost all of them were failing abysmally because the young people that were in it didn't know how. They didn't know anything about Toastmasters. They'd had a mentor for a mere 6 months who then left them, and they don't know how to do renewals. They don't know how to do a district success plan or a club success plan. They don't know how to get in and out of pathways in 6 months. They don't know how to do their officer programs. They don't know that there's training. They're baby chicks starving to death. And of course the club fails. So, you know, I remember in Tokyo, I was so excited because I was going to this big Amazon club and I was just like, woo, Amazon in Tokyo. And this is so exciting. I think that's where it was. And I was so excited to go. There were 6 people, 6 young people walked in kind of shamefaced. And I said, oh, is your club meeting today? Yeah, this is all we've got. And I said, oh, what are you doing? Well, we can't get anybody to come. And I went, oh. It was set up like a community club. And these people, I said, have you had any training? No, where would we get training? I thought, okay, a couple more weeks and it's gone.
Mhm.
So anyway, I carry on.
Oh, these are awesome. Awesome. It's very stimulating. I'm getting excited about all of this stuff. Then I think I had a follow-up. So Ray had one follow-up question on that, was that at the beginning of the book, like you mentioned, it was published in 2018, and you had comments from Dan Rex and others. And so he was curious that, have you noticed any changes to training policies, et cetera, after the publication of your book? So
policies haven't changed yet. We do have a department at World Headquarters called Corporate Relations, and that has been staffed for about 3 years. So they've been doing foundation work. John Lurquin has taken over that department under his directorship, and John is, I have all the time in the world for John Lurquin. He's been with us a few years now, and he's just a brilliant man. I just have a lot of time for him. We can talk corporate, and he gets me and I get him, and we talk on the same page. So I have great trust that this will move forward and will eventually get done. You know, again, back to working, when we work and learn within a not-for-profit organization, we have to realize that Toastmasters, the only income we have is membership dues. So whatever tuition you pay to come to this education program, that's how we manage everything. We pay our staff on that. We buy our building on that. We pay insurance for our employees, etc. And we haul our members around the world, all of that on the tuition that we pay to belong to this organization. So I think you know, to stop and think, people say, oh, the world of business was hit. Well, Toastmasters was hit very hard as people fell from the Toastmaster tree onto the ground around the globe. And so financially, it's a huge implication also, not just the businesses that we work in, but the education program where we go to learn. And so as the board has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure the sustainability of Toastmasters and to build a budget that can support that, I think that as we rebuild and rebuild stronger, that we've got the funds. You know, they're rolling out some major $1 million projects right now, and so it'll come around. I'll still be here lobbying till the very end. So I enjoy. I invite you to help me in your districts by doing your part.
Very good. Awesome. So then one final question on that. So two of the biggest challenges when it comes to creating corporate clubs are time and money. And one of the greatest challenges in terms of time is helping the corporation understand that the sessions occur on a weekly basis. So one question was that in the book, you mentioned making one's emotional energy neutral about time. Can you expand a little bit about this and then have any suggestions about how to go about doing this and why you brought it up in the book?
Yeah, I brought it up in the book because I found my experience was that as I went with club growth directors out to make calls to corporations, and this was anywhere in the world, that people brought their own stuff in. So they were apologizing and afraid to ask for time, and they were afraid to ask for money. And I'm going, you shouldn't be in the corporation doing this sales call. Well, it's not even a sales call, it's an enrollment. Don't bring your personal energy and uncomfortableness about time and money in the corporate world to that call. You have set yourself up for failure right away. If you can't ask for money at the corporate, just neutral and put it out there, like you could be asking for $100,000 and you can just put it out there flat and sit there and wait. You don't have to defend, justify, sweat, make excuses, nothing. Just put it out there and sit and wait. If you can't do that, then don't do it. let somebody else do it. If you can't say with all integrity and belief that what we're asking is an hour a week for your people to practice. We build a skill. That's different than them sitting in a room for a half a day, listening to someone talk to them, getting some knowledge. We file it in a file somewhere and never to be accountable for it. We don't apply it. We don't be asked to apply for it. We don't have to, we're not held accountable to how we implement it. It's forgotten. If 2 weeks later, you can say to somebody, what did you learn in that program? And they'd say, what program? I know, because I ran those departments. And so we started implementing that when you finished, and this is why I brought this over to corporate also, in corporate clubs, is that we implemented accountability. So in second last corporation where I worked, if you took a program that we paid and you went during work hours, you had to have a follow-up session where you brought results back. You had to report back because we held people accountable, because we created a learning environment in our corporation. That was my mandate when I went there. I spent 10 years. We built it into a learning environment, but we had to build accountability. People were sitting in class and sitting there, and they would walk out and you'd go, so what was the most powerful thing you learned? Some of them would give you a blank stare. So I said, this doesn't work. This is a waste of time and money. This is the employee subtly stealing from the employer. And so what we did was, if you took a one-day course, you had to spend two hours in follow-up 2 or 3 weeks later. It depended on what the content was. And you had to come in and you had to show up in person and you had to report how you implemented and feedback you got from your supervisor. There were people that never completed their courses, but you know what? They quit showing up to sit in the classroom also. And we like that. So accountability. So that's what we want to build that into the workplace. So when people go back to Toastmasters, going in, I talk to the people in the workplace that this is about practice. We build skill. This is not just knowledge, but it's practicing the skill every week. Now, and they go, well, an hour a week is a lot of time. I said, let's put it in context. You've got 20 people, say minimum 20 people in the room. You've got 60 minutes every week. How good do you think you would be as a soccer player if you had 3 minutes max every week to practice? Or do you think that Tiger Woods would have been Tiger Woods if he would have practiced 3 minutes a week? That's what we're asking. They're going to be working on their listening skills and their thinking skills, but they might only get to speak for 3 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes, or 7 if they use their whole speaking time, if they sign up. But when they take 7, that dumps somebody else's speaking time. So is 1 hour a week too much? I don't think so. And if you send people for 6 months or a year, 18 months, 24 months, you know that they're practicing. But it also builds that we need to have accountability. So we want to track, and this is old fashioned. When I went to Toastmasters at the very beginning, we did attendance and we tracked where we were in progress. We have to do this in the corporation again, because they want facts and figures, just as we do attendance in learning and development departments. We take attendance. We know that Linda didn't show up for conflict resolution on Thursday afternoon. Well, where was Linda? Oh, her supervisor called her out to a more important meeting. When this program is inside the corporate training department, supervisors don't pull them out of training as often, because they've already got an agreement with the training department that this person's going to training. Mm-hmm. And so if we track attendance, there's accountability. We also want to track people's projects, what they're doing. So my expectation of my employees was generally, and it depended on how good they were and what level of development they were at, but my expectation every 6 months was approximately 3 prepared speeches in the 6 months, and at least 6 other major meeting roles. And they had to report that to me. So what I'm suggesting is that the administrative liaison, that would be one of those leaders in your group in the program, would track that along with the education liaison person. And they would track the data and report that to the corporation every, I don't know, you have to check with the corporation. Do they want it every month? Do they want it every 2 months, every 3 months? Take the data to them so that they can say, Pat's enrolled and she's showing up. Anu is enrolled and she's showing up. And there's that Linda, she's showing up half the time. Sorry, Linda. I know we can joke because we've got a good relationship. But, you know, the corporate wants to know that because they're paying for it and they're allowing the time as well. And then they want to find out why Linda isn't showing up. And if they find out Linda's supervisor isn't letting her go, now that's another issue, because if they have a policy stating that we're allowing people that are enrolled in the Toastmasters program this amount of hours and this amount of participation, then they can go back to Linda's supervisor.
Very good. Awesome.
So it all ties in. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. Every piece fits in with the other piece.
Yes, very good. And so that kind of brings answers some of the questions. We had another question from Dawn. She said, what are some proven methods for sustaining engagement of members? So it's also that accountability. Anything else you suggest to help sustain engagement of members? And I think I saw someone too that wrote, you know, how do you just keep it fun too? I know, like, because if you take out some of the nice things about community clubs, there's some more of that element of fun. Do you lose some of that fun when you have?
It really depends. It's just like a lot of other clubs. It depends on the personalities in it. Like what I'm at Toastmasters for is to learn. I want to have a good time. I want to like the people I'm learning with, but first thing on the list, I want to learn something. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can make meetings interesting. I don't know if they go in the fun category, because I'll tell you my benchmark, and I suggest I'll share it so that you can think about it. My benchmark when I put a program into the corporation, because I had autonomy, I had staff, I had freedom, I had budget, and I had a reporting relationship to the CEO. So I had it all, but she had expectations. And my CEO loved to walk into the classroom, stand in the doorway, and listen to what was going on. And if she didn't think that that was a rich learning environment, she was down the hall to my office going, what in the world is going on in that room? And that was my test. And that's what I use when I think of corporate Toastmasters. I say, if the CEO is standing in that doorway at any time, will they see rich learning taking place? So I don't want goofing. I want rich learning. That's my first priority. They can laugh and they can get along and they can build relationships, but fun, it doesn't go on my list. I'm one of those, let's go to work and get the work done, and education is education and the corporation's paying for it. But one of the things that I think really brings interest, that people go outside of that club and they have people come into that club, whether it's area or officers, whoever it might be that visits, if they have guest speakers once in a while. And I'm not talking about non-Toastmaster guest speakers, because this is the Toastmasters education program. I don't understand why we have a speaker from Rotary. No, that wouldn't be a good example, but somebody that's a professional speaker comes in and talks, gives their speech at Toastmasters. I go, I didn't learn anything. That's always my test. Did I learn anything? So I think there has to be an education component in every agenda every week. I say, make it challenging, because we're learning to listen and think when we're there. Have challenging table topics. Make sure that there's 2 speakers. Make sure that the evaluators are always being evaluated so that they're getting better. Call those people up that aren't doing a good job. Have workshops to make it better on speech building, evaluation, how to run a meeting well, and protocol. Get some parliamentary procedure training in there, because you don't have to use Robert's rules, but you can take basic meeting management and take it to the workplace and have it work for you really well. Have some discussion around emotional intelligence. We learn a lot about emotional intelligence in Toastmasters. When we have compassion, we identify with the speaker. We get that they're a beginner speaker, or this person's more advanced speaker. Like we adapt to what they have, or this person has a speaking disability, or whatever it is. We accommodate that. But every week, I think having a theme is challenging. Pick a theme, but not just for the opening of the meeting. Take that theme as far as your evaluators need to speak within this theme also. Stretch it, make it every section, not ho-hum. And every week at your session, another assigned role is to bring an education session. Somebody in the club has to put together an education, whether it's 3 or 5 minutes, to present to that group, whether they've read something in Toastmasters, they've got an idea, if it's about speaking, or if it's about a book in leadership they read, whatever it is, they need to present an education session. So there's lots of ways of beefing up the education and making it interesting and making it challenging. So and I think too that, back to a lot of Toastmaster corporate clubs that get isolated and insulated, a die of boredom, because they do the same thing. And the first warning sign is that you go and they say, oh, we're just doing table topics today. That is the worst statement that you can ever hear from a club. Alarm bells go off for me, and I want to button the hatches and bring them put them on oxygen, because I know this club's going down the tubes. We're just doing tabletops. In other words, we're not working the program today, or maybe not last week or this week either. So maybe I've been around too long.
Very good. There's been a couple more questions come in, and I think we have just 2 more minutes here. So I would love to.
I'll be fast.
Chat more with you. This has been really, really helpful and enlightening. So I did want to, Marty did send in a question, so I did want to address it. So she said that, because I know you talked about not making a corporate club, a community club, but could you position a corporate club to potentially expand to include community members in addition to and/or in place of company participants? I think one example I had with my corporate club is that they brought in retirees to come in and join them. Is that possible, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, then you've got the issue of who's paying. So, because then you have somebody that's walking in off the street who may be a retiree that fits into the culture, but who's paying? So now it gets really messy. And would they normally bring retirees in to take training? So my question always is, take Toastmasters out of it for a moment. Think that you're in a corporation and they're holding a conflict resolution training program. Who goes? Who gets paid? Do they go at work? Would they call their retirees and say, hey, we're holding a conflict resolution course. We have lots of money. Come take up one of the seats. Absolutely not. They would not do that. So I think then you're slipping into making it a community club. And that's what's, in my opinion, as I've watched it over the years, a lot of corporations, no, a lot of people that work for corporations start thinking, I'll build a club at work. And they try and they maybe get 20 or 25, and in a year's time, they got 15. And then they say, okay, because they're running around the hallways looking for people that they can pull into their Toastmasters meeting. And they go, okay, let's open it up and ask the neighboring buildings. It's all a community club because the corporation has no fingerprint on that club at all. It's Pat's club that she created in that building where she works. And Pat's held responsible for it. And Pat begs people to come, and Pat goes and asks people for the money, and Pat worries about the agenda, and Pat runs the elections, and Pat until she's so tired or leaves the organization, and Pat's Toastmaster club folds. It's gone, it disappears. It wasn't a corporate club.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. Oh my gosh, this has been great. I've enjoyed this hour. It's tremendously. Hopefully everybody else on the call. I've been enamored by your responses, and this has been very stimulating. So thank you so much, Pat, for joining us for this final session of the Creating Corporate Clubs chat. We really appreciate you, and thank you so much for writing the book. And perhaps we could do a follow-up session one of these days, and then we might send you the questions that we didn't get to, and to make sure that they get answered. So, but again, thank you so much. Linda, did you want to say anything?
Oh, this was so enlightening. I was taking lots and lots of notes here. Thank you. I learned so much, Pat. We really can't thank you enough for coming tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being brave enough to tear the Band-Aid off community and corporate clubs and look at them differently. Challenge yourself to set aside your paradigm that you currently hold and go over and visit that world of corporate. Pretend that you're in charge of learning in a corporate world, and how would you manage it and what would it look like? And I think that'll, that paradigm will help you get your head around it. And I will say, I don't think there's one way of doing this. We have to adapt to each corporation and their environment and how they do their training. But thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for accessing my book and the information. And I wish you the very best in District 2. And I'm so close. I'll gladly visit anytime you ask me. So wonderful. Great care. And I hope to see some of you at International this year. I hear that it's going to happen.
Very good. Awesome.
I hear that there was some notice going out for district leaders to block some dates off. So yay.
Wonderful.